Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to the review of a brand new watch from a brand new company launching on Kickstarter in a couple of weeks' time, the Knightsbridge by Bernard London. Welcome today also to a slightly longer introduction than usual. Indeed, you could probably call this one a rant. Perhaps you've already guessed by the thumbnail and the video title today. This isn't going to be a 2 thumbs up, happy and positive review, I'm afraid. I try not to do this very often. I try to see the good in watches that are sent to me, and I try to only review watches that I think I'm going to like and I think by extension are worthy of your time. But this one has just got up my nose in a couple of different ways, which I'll explain to you. Don't just take my word for it though. I'm only one man. This is just my opinion after all. There's at least one more review of this watch available on YouTube that comes to a very different conclusion. Oleg from 24 Hours at a Time reviewed it last week. He says this watch offers Omega quality for $700 US. I'm afraid I just don't see that. I see it as offering citizen quality for $700 US. And there's a few more details that I'm just not all that happy with. Let's start by looking at the inspiration for the brand. I've heard plenty of very similar stories. I met this guy called Danny Wallington and he inspired me to leave my position as an accountant at the local bus company and follow my dreams of starting a new watch brand. Sounds a little bit hokey to me, but at least it's a story. If you check the Bernard London website, Dean Bernard, the man who owns the company, was sitting in a posh London cafe one day, noticed the amount of posh Swiss watches on the wrists of customers around him and decided he wanted a little bit of that pie for himself. Or at least that's how it sounds to me. Honest perhaps, but perhaps he should have been dishonest. Then let's look at the naming of the watch. One big problem that a new micro brand has is that it has zero history and zero heritage. It's a brand new company. You'll see a lot of brands trying to leverage off of place. They'll attach themselves to a place, usually a city with thousands of years of history and heritage behind that, and leverage off the history of the place that they're based in. For example, the Camden Watch Company mercilessly do this with the borough of Camden, but they do it quite well. A heap of ye olde style packaging and an interesting array of connections to the local borough. Lilienthal Berlin is another good example. Again, Berlin in the title of the watch company, much like Bernard London. But they have a unique polygonal crown design to ape the Berlin world clock, and the Arabics on the dial, two different styles representing the street signage from the formerly East and formerly West Berlin. So they've picked some designs out of the cityscape and incorporated them into the watches. Bernard London, perhaps I've got this wrong, perhaps there have been 1,000 man-hours poured into the design of these watches, but it looks for all the world like they've picked 6 design colourways out of a catalogue and given them appropriately posh street names from the London borough of Knightsbridge. And then we move on to pricing. We are reliably informed that this Knightsbridge watch will normally cost £1,000 British. That's $1,300 US at full retail price. You'll get your VAT back off that, but that's still going to come in at over £1,000 US. But you can sign up and get one of 100 exclusively numbered pre-order pieces for half of that price. I'm sorry, I just don't see this watch as being worth £1,000. That gives you the pick of the Christopher Ward catalogue if you want to go relatively micro with a 5-year warranty and Swiss made on the dial. You can get a Longines, you can get a Tissot, you can get an Oris, you can get a bunch of stuff with 100+ years of history and heritage behind it for less than £1,000. So they've got to do something about that pricing. I just don't think it's realistic. In fact, I think it's a bit cynical. Ouch, Jody, that's a bit of a rough way to introduce a watch, isn't it? It's not all bad. This watch does have some redeeming qualities, including, I think, the best movement that you can put in a watch for £500 or less. So let's flip the camera, if you're still interested, and have a look at it. Oh dear, I rather have given this one a bit of a hard time in the intro, haven't I? Perhaps I should point out that Bernard London got in touch with me. They asked me if I would be interested in reviewing this one, and they sent me the watch for nothing with no obligation to return it. I'll leave it up to you to discern whether or not my opinion has therefore been bought, or you would consider this to be a sponsored video. Now, just look at the size of the box. Again, forgive me, but I'm a little bit cynical that perhaps they were trying to mask the quality of the product by putting it in a giant piano lacquer box. Perhaps this watch is just a box ticking exercise. There hasn't been a lot of passion or creativity poured into this. They've just thought, oh, how do we sell some units? How are we going to market this one? Let's put it in a big piano black box for a start. But enough of the moaning and enough of the packaging. Let's finally get into this one and have a look at it. Now, I should point out that this is a review sample. This does not necessarily reflect the final product. I guess there's at least one major difference that they're going to change. That'll be the clasp on the bracelet. I'll show you that one later. But I would imagine that to most intents and purposes, this is what you'll be getting if you do indeed sign yourself up for one of these. Oh yeah, and to remind you that it is in fact a Swiss watch, they have rather conveniently attached a little memory aid in plastic to the watch. Okay, I promise I'll be nice for at least the next 2 minutes. 41 millimeters in diameter, just under 12 mil thick. One of the benefits of using a Sellita or similar ETA 2824 clone is that you can make it nice and slim. 48, just under 48 mil lug tip to lug tip, 20 millimeter lug width, tapering down to 18, back up to 20 on this currently unsigned. I would imagine they'll be doing something with that unsigned clasp. Sized up for me, 7-inch wrist. This one weighs in at a nice and light 130 grams. 316L stainless steel case, fixed bezel, crown, full stainless steel bracelet. Now we've got solid links, just push pins though, no problem sizing those, and it is a proper 5-link bracelet. Full stainless steel construction, and it does have a piece of dead flat sapphire crystal covering that dial. Case finishing is perfectly decent, high polished side, little chamfered edge transitioning to a nicely fine brushing on the lugs. And it's a kind of stepped case vintage style. We've got a little crown here, not screw down. This watch isn't a particularly sporty or diverish, so you don't really need a screw down crown. We've got a kind of onion style crown, nice bit of texturing, and the Bernard logo just printed on the end of it. Finishing on the bracelet is pretty pleasant. Mixture of a kind of satinized linear brush and little polished on those tiny little outer inner links, if you see what I mean. Nice curvature to them, they're quite smooth underneath, and we've just got push pins. One problem though is there is a raised edge because of the way that they've used those links. It is quite noticeable. The mid links do sit proud, and it does tend to catch if you run your finger laterally across the bracelet. Now, zoomed right in on the dial, and you've got a couple of different textures, different finishes on here. Just the Bernard logo printed there above the 6. Similarly, printed minute track around the outside, 5-minute increments, and little minute markers there as well, making this one quite useful. You've got multiple concentric circles on an outer ring, and you've got a kind of raised border denoting the difference between a textured inner ring there. We've also got a second circle and an open heart. I haven't seen a lot of open heart watches. They don't tend to be all that popular around the $500 US or less that this channel tends to specialize in. I don't think it looks too bad if that's your cup of tea. Just sits slightly off center though, so you do have slightly uneven indexes there at the 12, the 11 and the 1 o'clock. They've managed to do a little bit of perlage work, a little bit of decoration on the bridge there also. Handset's nice and simple, Dauphine hands with a bevel in the middle, and you've got those nice arrowhead indices on all of the hours, and it does attract the light nicely. It does kind of glint and glisten. Nice combination of hands and indices then. Popping a link there to show you the display case. I believe it's sapphire on the back as well. Usual adverts, Swiss made, sapphire crystal, 100 meters of water resistance, which I must say is pretty good considering this isn't really a sports watch, but it does mean you can swim with it, you can get it wet in spite of the lack of screw down crown. Knightsbridge is the model, and Brompton the specific colorway, and in there really is the star of today's show as far as I'm concerned, the Sellita SW200-1. I'm a big fan of these movements. 26 jewels, so it's a clone of the ETA 2824 but with one extra jewel, roughly 40-hour power reserve, hacks, hand winds, 28,800 vibrations per hour, leading to a nice smooth high beat sweep of the second hand, and they're pretty reliable, pretty accurate as well. Pop this one in the winder for a week just to make sure that it was a good one, and indeed it is a pretty good one, as you can see there from the numbers. For my money, I would prefer a Sellita 200 over an ETA 2824 any day of the week. I generally find them more accurate than their ETA counterparts. Nice also that they have put a signed rotor on this one.
Well, there we are. You love the movement and you were nice about the shiny indices and hands. Unfortunately, it all comes apart again when you put this watch on wrist. It's not actually all that comfortable to wear. It has a number of sharp edges. Those super curved lugs are actually quite sharp. You can see there just how stark that downward turn is and how the bracelet integrates within it. And if you have a look, they're actually just quite sharp, those lug ends. If you wear your watch loose, you're going to be poked and prodded by this one most of the day as it slides up and down your wrist. Not exactly a sign of luxury. Perhaps that's what Oleg meant when he was referring to Omega quality. My Aquaterra can be a little sharp on wrist as well, but it's not a quality of the watch that I admire. Anyway, I do like the arrowhead indices and the Dauphine hands. They do catch and play with the light nicely. And that continues if you take the watch outside into natural light as well. I guess here you can look at the grass behind the camera through the open heart display. More normally though, you've been looking at your arm hair. It's not a thick watch and it does curve well with those lugs, but they're just a little bit too sharp for this one to be comfortable. So I'm sorry Bernard London, I guess this isn't quite what you were hoping for when you sent me the watch. I'm sure you were hoping that I would say it was fantastic and everybody should buy two and a third one for their grandmother, but I just can't hand on heart recommend this watch, even at the £500 introductory price. Too many sharp edges, not enough character, and I believe a degree of cynicism in the way that it's been branded and marketed that I don't find all that appealing. It is an absolutely cutthroat market out there in the watch world at the moment. New brands have to come along and do something different. They have to do something better, I think, than this one's doing in order to make an impact. They either have to stand out in terms of their design, in terms of their branding, they have to do something original, they have to do something different, or they have to offer incredible value for money. And I just don't think that this watch does any of that.
So there you have it, the Bernard London Knightsbridge then. Not my favourite watch that I've reviewed over the last 12 months, I'm afraid. Not without its qualities, the case is reasonable, the finishing is okay, and it's got a cracking Sellita 200. Great movements and I think slightly underappreciated. People normally proclaim the ETA 2824, the original, as the best, but I'm a strong favourite for the Sellita. But I just don't see where your £500 is going with this one. The dial looks okay, there's some nice touches there, and if you like the open heart designs then this isn't a bad way of doing it. You get Swiss made on the dial after all, but I think companies like Bernard London really have got to try a little bit harder than this if they actually want to extract the cash from your pocket. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one where I promise to be gentle.